Today in the Dolphins versus Texans game, there was a really scary hit on Dolphins wide receiver Grant Dubose. He seemingly suffered a head or neck injury and laid unresponsive on the field and was eventually taken off on a backboard and a stretcher to a local hospital. My name is Dr. Betsy Grunch, and I am a board-certified neurosurgeon, and let me break this injury down for you and explain why I think that this was a concussion. As a trauma specialist, I can analyze the mechanism of injury and his neurological behavior right after the hit to try to gain some insight as to what happened and what the potential injury was. When analyzing the film, we first see that he gets hit in the head and his neck kind of goes to the side and his head is rotated. And to be honest, on first glance, I was really worried about a cervical spine injury. Then you see him go down on a second impact and hit the back of his head on the turf. As you watch his body after the hit, you can see his arms are at his side and his fingers do seem to be moving just a little bit. This isn't the traditional fencing pose that I've explained on previous injuries, such as Trevor Lawrence's injury 2 weeks ago. You may remember about 2 years ago when Tua suffered a pretty bad concussion on the field and we saw his hands both draw up to his face. And this response by Dubose was very similar to that. That's a typical posture of what the body can assume after a head injury. And by looking at that, you can almost rule out a cervical spine injury, because if he did break his neck and suffer a spinal cord injury, you would be flaccid in all four extremities, meaning his arms would be loose at his side and he wouldn't be moving them. So by analyzing his body positioning after the impact, you can almost rule out a cervical spine injury and classify this as a severe head injury. Now, the really scary part is he was down for a prolonged period of time, and there was numerous medical professionals that were attentive to him, removing his helmet, removing his pads, and removing his shirt. He was subsequently transported to a backboard, immobilized in cervical spinal precautions, and then taken off the field and transported to a local hospital. You can see that they applied oxygen on the field. They even applied EKG leads to his bare chest, and we really haven't seen that before in other head injuries in the NFL. So why did they take off his helmet, his pads, and his shirt? My assessment is he was likely completely unresponsive, and they were gauging the ABCs. The ABCs are how we respond to a trauma patient: airway, breathing, and circulation. They took off his helmet to secure the A and the B of airway and breathing, and his jersey and chest pad for C, or circulation. They checked his pulse and were assessing his heart function by analyzing that EKG to check for arrhythmia or other cardiac dysfunction. They applied oxygen before he was quickly escorted away in an ambulance. So my assessment is that he likely suffered a head injury and was unresponsive for a duration of time in which the medical team felt it of priority to assess his ABCs and secure him in full spinal precautions so he could be safely escorted to the hospital for other testing, which likely would include a CAT scan of his head and neck. The Dolphins have since released a statement stating that he is stable at the hospital and has been diagnosed with a head injury, but we are not sure how severe it is. My thoughts go out to Grant and the Dolphins community as we await to see how severe this injury is. I would also like to say that I was really impressed by how the medical team on the field assessed the situation, stabilized him, so he could be further evaluated.